Alright, let's get down to business. This behind the scenes is going to be separated into 4 categories. Those categories are actually going to be the programs that we use in order to achieve each part of All Hail the Dwarf Lord. So we're going to start, of course, with Minecraft. You know, how we recorded it, or more specifically, what sort of tricks we had to come up with in order to get exactly what we needed in the raw footage in order to composite the dwarf in later. The next program we're going to look at is Match Mover. We're going to look at how we motion tracked the footage we got out of Minecraft in order to make it usable as a 3D camera within Maya. So of course from there we're going to look at Maya. We're going to look at how we animated some of our render settings and sort of some of the tricks we used. You know, I had a really specific way I wanted the shadows to look on the dwarf. So we're going to take a look at that. And then from there we're going to look at After Effects. And we're going to throw some Photoshop in there, but there really wasn't a lot used on this project because we did most of everything in After Effects. So alright, let's jump right in. So let's look at Minecraft. Now Minecraft can be broken down into 3 sections. So we're going to talk about, number 1, we're going to talk about how my character was killed both times without the use of mobs or another player attacking me directly or anything like that. And then the second thing we're going to look at, which is kind of trivial, but the second thing we're going to look at is the dwarf kicking the bow. Because that was actually really important for me for the story that we wanted to tell. And from there we're going to look at explosions. Specifically the one that rips open the library floor as the dwarf jumps through. Alright, let's get started. This may seem like a roundabout way of explaining things, but in the end I definitely think it's going to make the most sense. While we were recording, Nick and I separated the process into 2 parts. Part A and Part B. Now Part A is everything up until the point where I hit respawn, and Part B is everything after that point. The reason that we separated things into 2 parts is because it's incredibly difficult to record everything perfectly in a single take. Once we were satisfied with Part A and Part B, all we had to do in the end was just edit them together. Alright, so now let's take a look at both my perspective and Nick's perspective of Part B. So the dwarf kicks my bow.
Oh god, I don't have any weapons.
Then there's an explosion.
What the heck? Oh my god. Oh crap. No. Oh my god. Oh.
And then I die a second time. Alright, so I'm sure it's probably really hard to understand what was going on in Nick's perspective. But that really goes to show you that I definitely could not have done this on my own. I required a second player so that we could get the footage just right to be usable for the project we wanted to make. So how do we kill my character? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Here I've got a redstone clock that's hooked up to 2 separate command blocks. This command block deals a level 200 damage effect to any player that enters this specific radius that's in survival mode. That's enough to kill you instantly. This command block clears the inventory of any survival player that enters the same radius of item number 261, which is bows. Now the reason that I needed it to remove the bow is because when you die, items shoot out all over the place. Now if the bow ended up showing up in the death screen, it might not land where I needed it to. See, we had a specific plan for where we wanted the bow to be for Part B of the recording. So if you saw it land, let's say, over there, it would kind of defeat the purpose and the illusion would be lost if we just jumped it over to this spot. The way we had the dwarf kick the bow is we teleported Nick halfway into the ground so that the bow was level with the floor, and then all we had to do was have him throw it. I understand that this was probably confusing and a lot of you guys probably didn't even notice the dwarf kicking the bow. The truth is that only viewers who've been with my channel for a while will understand the significance of the bow and why the dwarf is there to destroy it. Regarding the explosions, that's another trick that was actually pretty simple. You see, we didn't use creepers, we didn't use TNT of any kind, we actually used end crystals. You see, I'm using a custom texture pack, so on my screen, beacon effects as well as the end crystal are invisible. See, because Nick is sitting in the ground there during the whole recording as you saw from his point of view, and he has a potion effect on him for invisibility. So that's how we handled basically everything. I know a lot of you guys probably could figure this out on your own, but the real tricks to getting this done properly was all about the timing and how we managed to get the timing just right. You know, if you look at Nick's screen again, there's some pretty complicated things happening there that you might not have even noticed. See, Nick needed to get from the first end crystal to the second one very quickly, and it proved to be extremely difficult because the resulting crater from the first explosion was very disorienting. So what we ended up doing was taking the dirt that was underneath the grass and switching it to bedrock so the crater wouldn't be so deep. If I had been smart, I would have changed bedrock in my already custom texture pack to look like dirt so it wouldn't have shown up in the end result like it actually did. In the end, it turned out that even with the bedrock there, it was impossible to get Nick from the first end crystal to the second one fast enough. So here's how we actually ended up making that happen. Off screen, we had my iPhone set up with a remote desktop app accessing the computer that the server was running on. We typed in a command to have Nick teleported directly underneath the second end crystal, and all Nick had to do was hit the first one, then hit enter on my iPhone, and then click again to destroy the second one. Then from there, I had Nick hit slash, up, and enter in order to reuse his last command, which we made sure would be the command that would kill me. So what this actually ended up doing for us is it made my death spot for the second death completely random. By doing it this way, I had no idea where the second death was going to actually occur. So it felt more natural to be able to just run around and then get killed and deal with the response more authentically. Alright, so that's how we handled everything inside of Minecraft. Let's take a look at what we did inside of Matchmover. For those of you who don't know, motion tracking is the process of taking live action footage, or in this case Minecraft footage, and marking down points throughout the duration of the sequence in order to extrapolate three-dimensional data so that you can export a 3D camera with which you can use to animate and later composite something back into that footage. I know that might sound very complicated, and it might seem like I only know how to do this stuff because I work in the visual effects industry, but the truth is, before this project, I had never motion tracked anything. Before settling with Matchmover, I started tracking in Buju and After Effects. The reason I ended up settling with Matchmover is because it comes with Maya, and I sort of felt like that would mean that it would translate the best from the footage into the 3D camera I needed. To save myself extra headache, I disabled the beacon that was providing speed boost around my base. My biggest concern with motion tracking Minecraft footage is the focal shift that happens when you do things like sprinting or entering a field where a beacon is affecting you. Minecraft presented some unique advantages and difficulties when it came to motion tracking. Because everything in Minecraft is a block, there were plenty of corners for me to track. The problem was that the repeating textures made it impossible to auto-track things, because the computer believed it was tracking the correct pixel, but it was actually jumping around to all the different spots that had that same texture. So as painful as it was, I ended up hand tracking every single frame for over 100 markers. It turns out that it was actually impossible to get a perfect track. To combat this, what we ended up doing was combining several different tracks together. We didn't need the track to be 100% perfect, just perfect for the frames where the dwarf was present. Probably the biggest lifesaver in the entire motion tracking process was the ability to import my base as a 3D model and connect all the markers I tracked by hand directly to the vertices they represented. This extra amount of spatial data helped the computer to figure out what to do at the points where the focal shift did in fact change. Once we were happy with the track, we brought it into Maya. This was actually the easiest part of the project, because I happen to be a certified professional in Autodesk Maya, so you could say I know it pretty well. A couple months ago, a friend sent me this model and asked me if I wouldn't mind building a character rig for him. My knowledge in Maya extends to every part of the pipeline, but I definitely specialize in character rigging. Immediately after seeing the character, the idea for episode 50 popped into my head. I shared it with him and told him I'd be happy to build the rig for him. So after completing the rig, I handed it to Nick. Typically in video games, animators will work really hard to get a nice smooth animation for each character. Unfortunately, programmers usually end up cutting out more than half of the keyframes in order to make the animation cycle small enough to fit within the game. I told Nick that this was a look I definitely wanted to replicate, but rather than go to all the trouble of putting in a clean animation, I just told him to half-ass it. Once he was done, I took a look at it myself and did my own animation pass, just to make sure there wasn't anything that was a little too distracting. To render the dwarf, I didn't add any lights to the scene at all. I felt like it would distract from Minecraft's feel. Instead, we just took the texture and plugged it into the incandescence of the shader. This gave us a look that we thought we could work with. When it came to doing the shadows, I had a very specific way I wanted to do them. I knew that I could mimic some of the natural shading in Minecraft using ambient occlusion, but I needed to make sure that it was only affecting the places the dwarf was standing, so I couldn't just use a full ambient occlusion like this. Instead, I had to separate it into parts. So I made a separate render layer for each plane of the faces he was going to be walking on, and that's basically how we handled this. From there we dove right into After Effects, which was probably the longest portion of the project. Let's start by looking at the raw footage and the final project side by side. See it. What the hell is this doing in Minecraft? Alright, we're just gonna go for it. Alright, dude, get the fuck out of my game! Oh my god! Oh my god, he's strong. Holy crap.
Oh, come on, dude! Oh god, I don't have any weapons. Shoot. Oh my god, what the heck? Oh my god! Oh crap, no, 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 no. Oh my god, oh my god. Oh. Freaking A.
Alright, so I'm gonna try to go in order so I don't skip anything. So obviously it would be nothing more than the raw footage until about this point. Then we'll add in the renders from Maya, as well as the shadows. Moving forward to this point, where I strike the dwarf, I needed to have his color changed the way it does in-game for other mobs, so a simple color correction handled that. So at this point a lot of things are actually happening. So once again I needed the dwarf's color to change because of the red tint that happens when you die. This red tint is actually sitting on top of the previous red tint for the duration of his in-damage state. There's a lot of masks at work here to bring the "You Died" text, as well as the score, the respawn and title screen buttons, the sword, the hop bar, the hunger bar, the level bar, as well as another color correction to put a black bar over the portion where the text chat shows up. Another couple things you can see in this frame, in fact, are the mouse cursor that I put back on top of the dwarf, as well as the in-game crosshair, which I specifically set up so that anytime the dwarf crossed in front of it, it would invert his color. Putting the dwarf behind the semi-transparent portion of the hotbar was actually pretty easy, because I just used the texture that was actually from the game in order to apply the transparency to him. Another thing that's shown up at this point is the death message. You saw in the Minecraft portion of this behind the scenes that the death originally read, "Seiferus was killed by magic." Our original idea was to completely remove the word magic and add the words "the Dwarf Lord," so that instead it would read, "Seiferus was killed by the Dwarf Lord." Just before I started working on this portion of the project, I realized that in-game the death message would have actually read, "Seiferus was slain by the Dwarf Lord," and not "Seiferus was killed by the Dwarf Lord." So in the end I decided just to add AL as in magical and then Dwarf Humphrey in order to get that out of the way and not waste unnecessary time on it. Moving forward a little bit, you can see that I masked out some of the items that I drop as I die. At this point I needed to add two small corrections to fix the semi-transparent texture showing through particles. So on the right side I added something here to fix the water, and up top I added something to fix the nether portal. Since the dwarf would technically be covering that up, if this was occurring in-game, those things wouldn't have shown up, even with the bug as it stands right now. So in the raw footage you might have noticed here as I respawn that there's a several hour difference in time. This is a really easy thing to fix in the end, because all I had to do was take a snapshot right before rendering and change the time portion so that this video wouldn't look like it was recorded before my 49th episode, which came out on the same day. So this is the part where I needed to use Photoshop. Here you can see that in the original footage there were actually two bows. In the takes we didn't use, Nick had thrown the bow and then switched to an item that was invisible in my texture pack to prevent this. Unfortunately, on the take we decided we were going to use, Nick's scroll wheel got stuck and that didn't end up happening, so there were two bows during the duration of the kick. There's easier ways to fix this, but I just decided to go in and Photoshop every frame. And I'm really glad I did, because I think the end result came out pretty nice. Moving forward to here, you can see that I went ahead and masked a couple of the particles that were in front of the dwarf, just to make it feel like he was sitting in the cloud and not on top of it. This is just another subtle detail that makes the dwarf look like he really belongs in the original footage. At this point it's the same thing as before. I change the dwarf's color, I apply a bunch of masks, and I add the cursor back on. The last thing we changed was the splash text in the title menu. There's really no reason for it, but I thought I'd add a little bit more to the piece. And hey, maybe someday one of the developers will see this video and decide they want to add "All Hail the Dwarf Lord" to the splash text of the game. That would definitely make all the hard work that's gone into these videos worth it. Alright guys, well that's about it. I really hope you've enjoyed "All Hail the Dwarf Lord" as well as this behind the scenes video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it and if you want to see more of Humphrey. In fact, actually, this isn't the first time Humphrey's shown up in my videos. I'm kind of surprised nobody's found it yet. It sort of explains where he came from. If you have any questions about the topics I covered in this video, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'll do my best to either reply to it or talk about the subject in one of my future videos. And if you guys feel like you've understood the subject matter and you'd like to make a video like this one yourself, go ahead and send it to me in a video response. I'd love to see what you guys can come up with. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.